Let's start. Hi, good morning, Steve. Welcome to the Aloysius X Peterson. Um, what's that? Customer service with Aloysius X Peterson. That's apparently what my show is called. Something new, but it's something I'm enjoying. Thank you so much for joining me today, Steve.
My pleasure. It's good to be here.
Um, Ladies and gentlemen, this is the first part of a three-part series which myself and Steve will be showcasing to everybody. In this edition of the podcast, we'll be speaking about building your execution machine from a CX perspective. I'm pretty sure that most people on this planet know Steve Towers and love Steve Towers. I'll give him an opportunity to just give a short intro before we dive into this topic with regards to building your execution machine from a CX perspective.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ali. Oh, excuse me. So thanks for that, Ali. Yes, great. Thank you. Let's do a brief synopsis of the last 40 odd years. I've been involved in customer experience, customer service, and operational management for the best part of 25 years now. And along the way, I've had the pleasure of working with some of the world's greatest leaders and some of the world's greatest organizations. So, what I'll be relating to you isn't a sort of theoretical academic understanding of this question that we're going to be answering in a moment or two, but actually, it's based on the practical reality about how those organizations and those leaderships are at the forefront of customer centric thinking and practice. So, whether that's customer experience, customer service, a service. It gets called all those different sorts of names. So I very much respect Aloysius's webinar title. That's pretty much covers all the territory, doesn't it? But yeah, so I've been involved in hands-on doing this stuff, and my life takes me to different parts of the world, different organizations in different sectors, working with them, sometimes upskilling them, sometimes coaching executive teams, other
Hmm.
times actually rolling my sleeves up and getting involved in the detail of the projects itself. So I'm very much enjoy doing that and seeing different things pretty much every day.
Fantastic, fantastic. Steve, from my side, I have a question. When you look at your execution machine from a CX perspective, what are the most essential pillars you should look at when you're designing your execution machine?
Yeah, that's great that we can sort of distill that down because it's a very big territory, as we all know.
Yep.
And in my experience, I think there's four, if you like, pillars, and I'll do them one, two, three, four. Number one, people. Number two, customer understanding. Number
Mm.
three, our measurement systems, and then number four, digital. So if I
Yep.
delve into each one of those in turn, I'd like to say none is more important than any other one. You need all these four pillars to have a good infrastructure, a good framework to be able to be really successful in customer service and customer experience. Well, let's deal with the first one. And once again, I'm giving you a perspective that's not necessarily
Mm.
just my own, it's a perspective
Yep.
of other people who've been there and doing this. So
Yep.
if I'm stealing ideas from other people, that's probably true. Yeah, that's probably true. The first one, if we think about people, and sometimes this is quite misunderstood, is
Mm.
people think, oh, we need a new culture to become truly customer centric. And that is probably true. And they start off with initiatives in and around cultural change. In my experience, I would say that's the wrong place to start. One of the
Okay.
things that informs our behaviors and our culture is the attitude of our people. So, first and foremost, what we have to be doing is working with our attitudinal response to how we want to become customer centric. So, what do I mean by that? Well, I can give you a very sort of simple analogy. I can go down into the contact center and I can talk until I'm blue in the face about customer service, customer experience, and so on like that. Then, if I turn around at the end of that long conversation about getting everybody gelled up and energized and so on to do with dealing with customers, and then I say, oh, but by the way, you've got to get that average handle time down to less than 3 minutes. I've just dropped the mic, right? We'll have the wrong attitude in there because what you're paying me to do isn't necessarily aligned with delivery of a successful customer outcome. So getting that first pillar right, which is the people pillar, and it's really down to liberating our people to be able to
Mm.
make the right choices, give them the right information, give them the right tool sets. and not treat them as if they're just following a prescription and just following the script and just, ticking the boxes. No, we don't want that. So the first one critical is people. Second critical one, I think, is customer understanding.
Yeah.
And once again, it's one of those areas that sort of gets misunderstood in the sense that people will spend a lot of time doing surveys like Voice of Customer, and in several ways asking customers, what do you want? Right. But it isn't about that anymore. It's about what customers need. And as Steve Jobs famously said, 25 years ago now, if I went and asked the customers, what they needed, by the time they told me, their ideas would have probably moved on. So we need to get really good at being able to interpret the trends and understand how these needs are evolving. And alongside that, focus on needs rather than wants is this being proactive. So under customer understanding, what do I mean by that? What's around the next corner? Are we looking forward rather than just looking in the driving the car by looking in the rear view mirror? Do we know what's on the road ahead? And if we don't, how can we estimate and begin to mold the actual needs of customers before, once again, as we said, customers realize it themselves? And that's about forward thinking. That's not so much about looking at the past data and just extrapolating that past data into the future. It's pretty much about building an understanding. Some people would chuck in predictive analytics and Gen AI and things like that. Yeah, all those things come into the mix, but it's about building that understanding of the customer. And I think the third and last point on customer understanding is really about educating everyone that the customer is their job. It's not because you're sat in finance or accounts or IT. Yeah, the customer's not my job because I'm X number of steps away in the value chain from the customer. The only reason you're X number of steps away in the value chain is the way we draw the diagram.
Yes.
So to be truly customer centric, if we put the customer at the center of everything that we do and then connect everybody to customer success, we're going to be in a much better place. We're going to have an attitude, a behavior, and a culture which aligns everybody to that customer understanding. Sorry, Ellie, I get enthusiastic about this. Have you got any other side questions? I've got two more pillars to cover yet. So, okay, great. The third pillar is really around our measurement systems. And we're all sort of victims of the past, if you like. We've inherited ways of doing things which worked for the best part of time since the Industrial Revolution. It's only been in the last couple of decades that agenda has changed. And it's that often used phrase is what you measure is what you get. So it's really critical we're measuring the right things. And what do I mean by that? Well, traditional measures tend to focus on outputs rather than outcomes. So an output, how many of these things have you done in X amount of time? Right. So if I was in IT, it might be how many projects have you done that came in on time, to budget, and achieved the deliverables? Well, we might get a tick in the box for that. Brilliant. However, if those deliverables are not aligned to become customer centric, we might get really smart at doing dumb stuff. So we've got to think about that. Another one that I've seen emerging certainly in the last 5 or 10 years, and again, this is a big differentiator for organizations, is that paying your best people the most. And it's not just about payment, it's the reward system generally. So it's how do we play the game together? How do we collaborate as teams? But oftentimes we'll still be of that mindset where we'll recruit the least skilled people and give them our most precious resource, the customer. We put them in a contact center and then say, okay, get on with it, follow this script. And oh, by the way, if you get really good at doing this, we're going to promote you away from the customer. But you wouldn't have that with a soccer team. You wouldn't be taking your best players off the pitch and putting them in the changing rooms, would you? What you want is the best players on the pitch and for those people to be rewarded accordingly. That's the third measure. So we've done people, customer understanding, and measures. And I think the fourth one, which some people would say, oh, Steve, that should be your first one, is digital and digital capability. Right. However, again, a word of warning here is be really careful when you're thinking about this. Stay clear of those bright, shiny boxes. And there's lots of those around. And I know I've succumbed to that in the past as well, having run IT functions and so on. However, what we must recall is historically our IT systems were designed around doing stuff like payroll, accounts, customer service, human resources, things like that. However, the leading CX and customer service people are creating capabilities that are now directly linked to specific customer outcomes. So what do I mean by that? Well, it's less the functionality about what you're deploying and more, does this connect directly with success for the customer? I
Yeah.
like it. One organization always sort of, they have this litmus test when anybody comes from the IT side of things to prepare and suggest new projects. And the question they ask is, so how will this functionality contribute to successful customer outcomes? And naturally, if the response is successful customer outcomes, you know you're not talking with a customer centric person there, right? They need to get that sort of line. Uh, Another perspective on digital, and this has happened through time. It's not just peculiar to customer service and customer experience. It was there when we were doing BPM and BPR, when we were doing Lean and Six Sigma and all those other good things. Is budgets really determine naturally the spend, right? So ensure your digital investments are linked to customer success directly. Right? So there's several really good case studies. So I like the sort of things in South Africa that people like FNB are doing, where they make sure that any, for instance, in app development, that app development directly contributes to a successful customer outcome. It's linked. The metrics tell you whether you're achieving it or not. It's not, oh, we've created this functionality, it's in the app, it's just customers don't understand it or whatever. No, you must be able to align everything you're doing with those SCOs, those successful customer outcomes. So I think that's the four pillars, Aloysius, that there may be others, and I know the people on the call will be saying, "Yeah, but what about this? What about that?" But I think if you get those four things right, you're going to be pretty much home and dry in terms of becoming more customer centric every day.
Yeah, what you're saying that I'm thinking, I'm looking at it from first and foremost from a professional's perspective and also as a business owner. I think what a lot of us forget is that with all of these pillars, the reality is some you have to put all of them in place. But you also have to look at where your failures are. And I want to go back to your last point when we talk about digital, for example, and we talk about the app and the AI. I think the one thing that we as professionals don't always understand is that the metrics that we receive, where individuals are maybe not happy with the way the AI is generated or the way the AI is responding to the specific client, is actually of huge importance to becoming more customer centric from a business organization. So I'll give you a silly example, and I can act as a, let's use FNB in this case as a client. I call FNB. I use my app on my phone. The app isn't really helping me now. I call FNB, but I first get the AI bot, and then that doesn't help me. As frustrated as I am, FNB is receiving the data from that specific digital platform to ensure that the next time I possibly do contact them, that my journey or my experience is much more better. But then at the same time, what I would say is there a way where we can add in a pillar where from a marketing perspective or a customer communication perspective, that the customer can know that, you know what, we are actually taking note of you. We understand you're frustrated. We understand this and that happened on this specific day from a communication perspective. We are busy in the process of getting it to the point of where you will not be frustrated again. Is there a way where companies can actually start putting something like that in place so that you, the customer, can actually say, wow, you know, that wasn't a good experience, but I got an SMS from these guys stating that they know I contacted them, and stating that they are taking note of this, of what's happened. I am appreciative of it because remember, we're human beings. All we really want is to be heard. That is actually the point from a business perspective. When you're busy communicating, don't you think maybe that's something we should look at as professionals and as business owners when it comes to building your execution machine?
Oh, very definitely. And I think you've hit the nail on the head there in terms of the opportunity to learn in every interaction is there,
Yep.
right? What I tend to think as well is sometimes people can sort of over egg the cake, if you like. I was going to say hit it with a big hammer, but that's really mixing metaphors there. Is what they'll do is invest in, big predictive analytics engines.
Yeah.
They'll go and say, we're getting all this data. We need to collate this data. And I can remember one story that's pertinent to this that actually affected myself. I was working with one of the world's first internet banks. So that tells you how long ago that was. And we have this fantastic data set, but because nobody had ever done it before, we didn't have somewhere where we could go and say, well, how much data do we need to collect or whatever? And I tell you, talk about over egging the cake. There was one particular element of data, which is what is the color of your dog's eyes? Well, that's a bit excessive. That's going way, way too far. And it may be as simple to your point there, Aloysius, is understanding the patterns of customer behavior.
Yeah.
When we understand the patterns, we can weave into those interactions, into that conversation, reflecting back. And I know one of the airlines in the UAE does this very successfully. They know everybody who's on the plane. They know the last time they actually flew with them. They customize personalize the conversation when they're talking to you about those experiences that you've had with them and alongside them. They don't see it as, oh, this interaction is a one-off and
Yeah.
I've got to be successful. They see it as a continuing journey. So you're so correct there in terms of sort of saying, yes, we need to be able to inform the next interaction we have with what went on in the previous one, but not overload it, not have tons and tons of data, which is going to really fog the mind in terms of having a clear conversation. When I say conversation, it's not just word of mouth. It's through the apps. It's every digital interaction that we might have. It could be, God forbid, it could be a letter you've sent them. People still do that. Some organisations are still having letter production facilities.
Yeah.
Oh, but it's interesting. And emails. But every interaction is key and critical to informing the next interaction. Those moments of truth will determine whether you're going to stay as a customer or whether you're going to go and vote with your feet.
No, 100%. Steve, if I may ask, when you talk about the execution machine design, um, what what do you feel impacts the type of design you should put in place for your actual execution machine from a short term, a medium term, to a long term perspective? Uh, uh, if you were looking at various organizations and you're speaking to them, I know you do it quite often, what do you feel they should look at from an impact perspective, especially when they're busy building their execution machine design?
Yeah, and remember when we're talking about execution machine, I'm not just talking about the digital capabilities. It's
Yeah,
everything and everybody. It's that whole
yeah.
ecosystem. If you want to use another sort of hackneyed phrase that gets chucked in there a lot, I think it's the what organizations need to remember and they need to put front and center again is the customer. But your uniqueness, your ability to differentiate yourself, is based on your understanding of the customers
Mm.
that you choose. Some organizations will say, well, we don't choose our customers. And you go, therein is the problem. That might be part of the issues that you're facing. You need to be specific about who you want to do business with. So
Yeah.
that's the sort of fundamental point. Um, Now, another area that I see when we're doing the CX and CS audits is people using personas as proxies for their customers. And what I would say with that is there's nothing ever wrong. It's just it doesn't give us that laser-like focus that we now need in the third decade of the 21st century to truly get close to our customers. So using personas as proxies, I would say those advanced organizations are saying, no, we need to get more specific. We need to understand. Also, in
Mm.
terms of that customer link it's critical that besides understanding the needs, besides understanding the specific needs of the customers you're choosing to do business with, is this whole idea of the evolution of what we think of as the customer has evolved as well. And we tend to see, and it's codified into the approaches we use, three types of customer now. One is what we call funding customers, and that's where the money comes from. Two are watching customers, and that's people you and I might have not traditionally thought of customers, but they're the people who are the management team, the auditors, the regulators, people who are looking over our shoulder. They're not
Mm.
directly involved in the experiences and the processes that we're delivering, but they have an avid interest in the success of those. And then the third type are the enablers. And that represents pretty much most of us. It's the people who are actually delivering the product, the service, and the experience to the customer. And they're not just our internal people, within the boundaries of our buildings. They're actually people that we choose to collaborate with to deliver the service. So that whole idea of customer thinking has evolved, and we still see people talking about, the employee as a customer. Well, the employee as an enabler, as a means of actually being able to deliver the product and service, is probably, as Richard Branson reminds us sometimes, your most important customer. Because if you don't get that right, everything
Yeah.
else is going to fall apart. So I
Yeah.
think that designing your execution engine is that customer understanding needs to have been evolved. And one of the sort of point on that while we're discussing it is what we also see is when we're doing those audits, organizations that are truly customer centric can switch up their game, almost on
Yes.
a moment's notice.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and that goes back to a little bit to the point you were making earlier on. How much learning are we putting into our people and our systems? But switching up your game, a really good example of that recently was at the start of the pandemic. Within 48 hours, Amazon, whether we love them or loathe them, Amazon had actually changed their B2B business model in 48 hours. Right. Whereas other people are still scratching their heads now, years later, wondering about, well, how do we do that? So having that agility and flexibility is about understanding, look, customer needs are evolving. Sometimes they evolve very quickly as a consequence of things that happen to us as a business, as a nation, and so on. How adept are we at being able to embrace that need to switch up? How quickly can we do it? Or are we in lockstep, to the old idea of business requirements, specifications, and all that sort of thing? No, we need to get more fleet of foot. And I like the Googleism, isn't it? It's fail fast and learn. So
Yeah.
let's not get concerned about, trying new things. Let's try them. If they don't work, okay, well, we tried it. So what? And again, to your point, Aloysius, is customers will be very forgiving if they know that you're working on their behalf. They
Yeah.
also know that we're human and we're going to make mistakes. It's the way of life. That's how our kids learn. They walk into something and they learn not to do that very quickly because it hurts. The same sort of thing. Do we have that inbred culture in our organizations which allows us to understand and learn at every interaction?
On that point, I'm pretty sure most people are listening to, and they're quite intrigued when it comes to the execution machine design. Steve, if I was, and I'm not saying I'm not doing it because I can categorically say everything you speak about, we've done at my company, and it's changed things honestly, in the last 2 or 3 months. So I don't want to go into that. That is a very biased point. What I would like to do is I would like to find out by you, for obviously for the audience sake, where can they learn with regards to how to optimize and build their own execution machine?
Yeah, I tend to think of these things as, and I'm going to sound like a broken record here again, though, for anybody who knows well how passionately I talk about this, is there's so much stuff to be thinking about all the time. One of the litmus tests in terms of success around customer is, are you
Yeah.
winning the Triple Crown?
Yeah.
So and that Triple Crown idea is that, are you simultaneously growing revenues, reducing cost, and enhancing service? Right?
Yeah.
Because those are what create shareholder value. So whether we're a government entity, a non-profit, profit, or whatever, we're all trying to create shareholder value. Right?
Yeah.
So is everything that we're doing in that CXCS space aligned to creating that? So and that's the short term, medium term, long term. It's not like it's different whatever you're looking. So my justification with project teams is, okay, so let's say we do this and let's say we make that change. How much is it going to move the dial on revenue, cost, and service? And
Yeah.
the test there is it must be simultaneous. So often I'll be at a conference and some sort of senior executive will come up to me and say, Steve, we're already doing all that outside in customer centric stuff. And you go, okay, let me see your profit and loss statement and your balance sheet. And they'll say, well, why do you want to see that? Because that's not to do with customer experience, it's customer service. It's absolutely everything to do with that. Because if
Yeah.
you're not simultaneously moving on those three vectors, whatever it is you're doing isn't outside in and it's not customer centric.
Yes.
So I think the other thing as well is, and you'll know me well on this, Aloysius, I will often say to customer teams, and I think customer centricity is a very broad church, but I'll often say to the teams, you know, when you're there and you're winning in terms of CX and CS change, when your strongest advocate is the chief finance officer. People go, oh, no, no, not chief finance officer. No, we keep away from those people. And you go, look, the remit is to grow revenues and reduce costs simultaneously. And yeah, we get service improvement as well. And we all want that in as CX professionals and that type of thing. But at the same time, you know you're home and dry when the advocacy of the CFO is there because you are moving that dial in terms of triple crown and subsequently shareholder value. So it's both short term, medium term, long term. So you can build a strategy around that. Yeah, that's great. But it starts with the project you're doing now. How
Yeah.
is that going to contribute to moving the dial on Triple Crown? And if it isn't, you really ought to get circumspect about that and sort of think, well, does this contribute to another project that does that? Or are we getting really smart at doing dumb things here?
I think that leads me to a question that I don't want us to go too deeply into it because I obviously want to push it into the next edition of our podcast. So now I've got the idea. I'm in the planning of doing my execution machine. Myself and my team, we're looking at every touch point of the customer, and we know what we want to achieve. How do we go to the board to ensure that the board buys in?
Okay, so that swings directly back to that Triple Crown thing. The reason why we're
Yeah,
doing this is because it
yeah.
delivers that. But also, we need it's another one of those evolution things where many of us will have program offices and project offices. And there's
Mm,
a grave temptation to sort of say, okay, well, let's put our CX and CS projects into, that PMO framework. Once again, based on the last couple of decades' experience, that isn't going to work as well as having a dedicated, customer management office, if you want to think about it like that.
mm,
And that's not a career choice. That's not a new function that's going to live for the next couple of decades. It's something that's going to extend the knowledge of the organization and help
yeah,
develop that culture and framework. And it has to be coherent in the sense that you may start off with several initiatives, but you want to group them together. So what you can see is the dial moving in the first instance that
mm,
encourages more support, encourages the momentum and the
yeah,
motivation for other people to be involved. But even for those people who are not directly involved, communicating with them, it's very important that they feel involved. And again, I use the phraseology a lot. You've got to connect the dots and draw the lines, right? And what do I mean by that? Well, connect everything to a successful customer outcome. The reason we're achieving that is because we win the Triple Crown. So to me, it's a pattern. Some of you will know I play a lot of chess and I'm an amateur meteorologist and so looking at the patterns around us and being able to become a really good pattern matcher. Now, from an operational point of view, that's on the project you're working on at the moment. That's from the programs you're involved with.
yeah.
From an executive team point of view, that's the steering strategy for the organization. So are these patterns aligned? Are they running in parallel, or is there something? Have we got cross wires? And it's the remit of those the senior people to actually clear the lines and let us get on with delivering, excellent, customer service, excellent experiences at every single interaction.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you so much for your time today, Steve. We're going to leave everybody with that last bit about the Triple Crown. And in our next episode, what we'll do is we'll speak about the Triple Crown. We will speak about what it takes for you to go back to the boardroom to ensure that your execution machine is adopted by the company and basically becomes its currency on the way your company flows and works, and not only recreate a culture of success, but also adds huge value to that return on investment or ROI for the organization. Steve, thank you so much for your time. I look forward to our next conversation. You have a fantastic day ahead. And again,
Very
thank you, sir.
much. It was a
See you
pleasure. See you
soon.
soon. Cheers,
Okay,
Aloysius. Thank you.
bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
Aloysius.
Yes. I'm just ending the meeting so I can download the recording.
Okay.